he spent like $600 and some thousand with us. I'm like, but he would try to basically get people to invest in their ideas, and then I guess a Ponzi scheme. And then he took his attorney maybe for a couple $1 million. My dad had passed away in 12, so I guess I had a little chunk of change. I invested, I could go cry in a corner, but more, whatever, $200,000. He rolls up in like an Aventador with the baby seat on the side, and his wife rolls up in a Huracan, and then his brother rolls up in a Huracan, right? And we're like, I mean, it's just, I think his bank accounts kind of got froze because the FBI maybe was coming in.
Lucas English and the team at English Racing have been a part of the import racing community for as long as we can remember. From street racing DSMs in the early days to building some of the world's fastest Evos and setting records with GTRs, their work has left a lasting mark on the scene. Over the years, we've had a chance to witness that evolution firsthand, and more importantly, build a friendship with Lucas that means the world to all of us at TRC. Like any long journey, there have been highs and lows, from unforgettable wins to unexpected challenges. But through it all, Lucas has stayed committed to the craft and to the people around him. We're excited to finally share that journey with you. This is the story of Lucas English.
My name is Lucas English. We live, shop and house currently in Camas, Washington. So I guess my first real hobby was BMX bike riding. Got a GT Pro Freestyle Tour that I got probably around 1990. For the time, I thought we got pretty good at that. Flat ground 360s, probably could bunny hop a couple feet in the air, compared to the kids nowadays, nothing. But either way, but the bike, I guess I've always been a tinker. The TV remote, I'd always taken apart. Not that I could put anything back together. Little robot, whatever. I would disassemble everything, and then obviously as I got older, I guess I got better at putting it back together. I guess this is how I've always been. Starting in, I think in 92, at that time, I guess I'd have been 12, 13 years old. My dad bought an airplane. So he was into flying in the 70s a bit. Ended up being able to get back into it in 92. So like my first discovery flight in like a Cessna 150 was in 92 when I was 12 or 13 years old. And then my dad's airplane was a Beechcraft Bonanza, which is a big bore Continental, 285 horsepower. So it's like a high performance complex airplane. So it has all cylinder head temperatures, exhaust gas temperatures. And then at that point, it had no turbocharger. It was all motor. And so as you go up in elevation, you're continually having to adjust the mixture and tune those. You're always tuning them, I guess. And so in getting my pilot's license, you learn about detonation. Of course, they don't do air fuel ratios on airplanes. Everything's based off of, exhaust temp and cylinder temps, but it gives you a somewhat of a feel for what's going on inside that engine. I guess I'm a little more old school mechanical way about it. The second I could drive, I guess my dad, as far as driving, like I learned to drive a Grumman Frito-Lay bread van. So starting from 11 years old, I would drive though about 3 miles from our main house to my dad's shop on these little skinny roads out here. So I guess the second somebody would let me drive, I was ready to drive, and then we had a tractor that we used some around the house. So I was making my own bicycle jumps and stuff like that. And then of course it was a John Deere with a clutch, not a hydrostatic, so you could pop some pretty good wheelies with the tractor if you wanted. You could just dump the clutch in the high gear. So I guess that interest for cars had always been there. So turned 16, I'm kind of a spoiled bastard. I guess I got my grandpa's 89 Accord. And then I guess at that time, my brother-in-law he was homeschooled. So for part of his project in homeschool, he was actually, his dad let him do a lot of home audio stuff. So he was building like band pass boxes and different speaker boxes. And so I guess, kind of got the niche going in the stereo stuff. So anyway, got the Accord, had a pretty good stereo in that. Of course, I drove like a pulling e-brakes everywhere. And so ended up crashing that rolled it 3 times. But either way, so that car was gone. So they ended up picking up a 92 CX hatchback Honda DX automatic. So then, of course, still in the stereos then. So for my senior project, I did like 615s, the Solberg 15s and that, and had a whole wall I'd set up. And so that stuff was really good for just working with your hands, I guess, building boxes and then wiring and, dealing with like, stereo systems. Everybody knows like alternator line stuff that makes you just want to go insane, so trying to run RCA cables over here and power cables over there and different filters. And so just really, so I guess all through high school, I think, the Crutchfield, and there used to be these magazines that come out that like literally had every amplifier ever made, so like I knew all the model numbers and what was supposedly the biggest power and all of that. I guess it had been senior year, high school. My buddy got a 87 5-liter Mustang. And then right at that same time, I guess in the year, we also did a LS swap into my buddy's Chad McNeil's a 92 CX hatchback. So that ran like rated at 15.0 and a quarter mile, but like in 98 or 9, that felt pretty cool. Like the Mustang at that time only ran like a 14.2. Honestly, the Honda and the Mustang, like 0 to 40, were actually a pretty good race, and we raced each other everywhere. So I guess I got the speed bug going. I was getting ready to pull the whole stereo out of my Civic and then do like a GSR swap or something at that point. Ran into a guy named Tom Hartshorn. It had a shop called Stay to Tune that he was doing. It was into DSMs. And so DSMs were all about do it yourself. How cheap can I do it? What's the backyard modifications? So he kind of put me in the direction of they call it VFAC, which I think it still exists today. It has all the wiring diagrams for DSMs, all these little hacker mods of like cutting the maps and trap doors. And then of course the Super AFC was popular then. 2001, bought a 92 Talon, already had a 16G, some exhaust on it. So yeah, back to the Talon is what started everything. 4G63, all-wheel drive. I never, to this day, I still think I never planned to open a business, and of course everybody calls me a real business. I'm like, well, we still work out of my garage. So I guess started racing the Talon a lot of street racing. To this day, some of the street racing I did in 2003, 4, 5 was some of the most, if I'm gonna get goosebumps and think of like glorious times, just down where one race, there was probably 300 or 400 people there. So those days before, nobody knew the Talon, the all-wheel drive and all that stuff. So I could definitely caught, at that point, the car was running low 12s in a quarter mile. So back to English racing. So either way, but the Talon, I mean, they're notorious. They have shitty-ass transmissions. They were never good from the factory, like right off the get-go, I'm breaking, center diffs in the thing. And so I really early on, I guess, just learned how to figure out the transmissions. So anyway, I started rebuilding transmissions. So I guess 2002, 3, I was kind of the local transmission guy. And so me and my wife I should be better at this, got married in 03. I was working at a semiconductor plant at the time, and I was on the night shift. And of course, that was really hard for me and my wife at that time. And so we just bought a house. And so I kept saying, hey, I need to go to day shift for the family. Now you're gonna stay at night shift. And of course, I was starting to get busy enough doing transmissions on the side. I'm like, all right, well, bought a house, let's quit my job. 1/1/2004, I incorporated English racing. So just all these little steps. Doing the transmissions was a big deal. Lots of tuning, lots of motor work, so anything to go racing. I guess the first major car would have been Paul Nelson's 2005 Lancer Evolution. He had a couple other, at that time I was messing with some Evos, but not a lot. I didn't have one of my own yet. And so I was still mainly the DSM guy, but all of our stuff at that time was running like low 11s, So Paul had been to a couple shops local to us, and of course, lots of problems and failures. So he was kind of the laughing stock, which was, sorry, Paul. So he ended up coming to us, and then we worked with Extreme Turbo Systems. He got sponsored by them. He was really big at posting on Evo M at the time, and at that time, I think nobody had been 8s yet. So it was like AMS. There was like 4 or 5 cars that were all trying to get themselves into the 8s first. And so I guess we were a part of that. We could go look at the D Sport magazine. I want to say it was January 1st, 2009. We were on the cover of the D Sport magazine, 1,009 horsepower. So I think we were at that point, it might have been, for a second there, we were the highest dynoed car, and that was on an AMD1. And so that would have probably been the flagship car. So played with that car for a couple of years. Of course, but he was an electrician, won the economy, crashed out, it pretty much took him out. And so then at that point, he owed us quite a bit of money and the car was here. So we didn't, technically, I guess we repoed the car or whatever. He didn't care about it. And when the bank called us, we were like, well, you know, this much money is owed. And then the bank never called us back. And then, so really this car just did a lot of sitting. So either way, I got my license in this car, 2010 maybe or 9, my NHRA license. So to run, I guess now it's a little, they have the sportsman, but it was a 10.0 or over 135, you had to have a license for it. So either way, at that point, when we're doing all kinds, our first like flex fuel, like Daniel Cowart was a customer of ours. We did like a 900 horse 6466 full flex fuel. Evo 8, and then we had Martin Lotz, and we had a Kosh, and sorry, other customers I'm forgetting about. So we had a whole plethora of that 800 or 900 horse builds that we did through there that were, I think, pretty noteworthy, at the time. And then of course, Jeff Bush's Eclipse, we were still pushing hard. Miles is always there with the Integra, of course, and front wheel drive, we were doing the half-mile racing, started up. So obviously he was noteworthy there, the roll racing, not necessarily the drag racing. So I guess we're kind of going back in time here, flipping through some photos. I believe these are all my time slips from just probably the Black Talon, and then my Evo I raced a bunch. So it might have even been, oh yeah, Evo beating for 2007. Hey look, I put a tag on my stuff. So this goes way back. This is 2007. So we used to do what they call a Hood River Run. It's put on by Northwest DSM. So a lot of kind of even more OG guys from the 90s, late 90s were a part of this crew. So we'd all, but a lot of good times here. A lot of, when we come back on the Portland side on Interstate 84, everybody's kind of racing everybody. And so those are all, so this goes back to the beginning. So this is probably, does it tell me? 2002. So I graduated high school in 98. That white 5-liter Mustang's pretty much, my brother-in-law bought that, or best friend bought that in 98. And that's when all the bad decisions, I guess, started happening. I bought the Talon. Mustang was faster, kept messing with the Talon until I finally beat it. And then that's my buddy's Ford Probe that was part of the crew named Jeremy. So there's us though, back 2002. We thought we were cool. This is an Apex intercooler that came off a Supra. And of course I just ripped the bottom of my bumper off and made it fit. So I guess the DSM stuff for sure. Track, so this is the old shop. So I'm not sure, just random cars we're working on. DSMs, of course. This would have been 2004 or 5. I incorporated the first 2004, worked out of my house till 2006, and we came up here like 2006 or 7. So this was a fun one. This was early when built this one for my wife. This car actually, so on a 14, so we're on a micro record here, so most people are gonna run away. So on a 14B, stock 450 injectors, front mount, exhaust, straight race gas. I was able to run 12.3 at 110 out of that car, so that was a pretty fun car when we took on that Hood River Run. There was multiple 400 or 500 horse cars that are fully built, 2.3 strokers, 3065s, 3052 turbos, and we beat them all with the stock one. So that's kind of stuff that makes me kind of smile. So the owner of ETS is local here. So the first time I met JR, he had a 300ZX, like a twin turbo one, but he had like a small block Chevy motor in it with a turbo, blow through on a carburetor, square header, and so it's like no hood on it, and this turbo's hanging, so maybe like a little bit of a Cletus McFarlane type of thing going on. And so we just started talking, and so at that point I meet him there. Then he'd had a somewhat of a successful go-kart business where he was building like go-kart motors and actually made super smart in figuring stuff out. So he figured out like a lot of goes. He sold the go-kart business and he was going to he started just an intercooler business. So then I had a buddy named DJ that we worked with for a while. So then JR would just sell us the intercoolers and then we were making the piping. Well, at that point, everything's like, we're just buying like mild steel mandrel bins and we got like a wire feed welder, like it's looking like shit, right? And so JR sees some of this piping we're making and he's like, you guys suck, like I need to do this myself. And so I guess that's where, I guess the 1G, from what I remember, the 1G DSM was the first intercooler kit that ETS ever made. And so then we would run obviously all their products. And then so that just kept, and so he did his sales on eBay and then with us, and we're buying his products. And so he had a belong PR4 intercooler and the 2G intercooler. JR kind of took stuff into his own hands a bit once they started growing, and this would have been, I guess, really 2004 or 5. Me and JR pretty much started about the same time. So yeah, then pretty much then the Evo 10, he bought his own Evo 10 and then kind of pushed that platform on his own. The Evo 10 was the only thing the same on an Evo 10 to an Evo 8 was the blow-off valve, right? It's aluminum block. Most people consider an Evo 10 not even an Evo. And then the R35 GTR, then ETS, we did the tuning for them, but they took that platform into their own hands. And then that's what creates a lot of confusion, because obviously they're a manufacturer, they're not a service company, and then we're not really a manufacturer. We have a couple little parts here, and then we're the service company, but then we're so close together, everybody thinks we're the same. So anyway, that's how that relationship, the relationship where I guess things went a little interesting was, I guess we were, out one night. This would have been 11 or 12. And of course, at that point I was tuning their car and we're kind of running. I'm like, hey, there's this shift sector that do half-mile racing, interested in taking the car to it. And he's like, hey, well, you can take it and drive it. I'm like, all right. So then that's pretty much, we never looked back, right? I want to say the first shift sector, we were right at that 200-mile-an-hour mark and kind of setting the record, And I guess if I was to go back to a glory day, those shift sector days were really cool, because back then it's like you had customers and shops and it's 200, 205, 210, 220, right? So there was like a sea of 15, 20 cars that were kind of like re-breaking the records back and forth. We just had moved into this shop. We're here, so I guess it'd have been like 12 or 13. This Austin Oaks seemed like, so got a hold of us. I think, I don't know, Miles talked to him at a race or whatever. And so he ended up sending us his 05 Evo, also a white one. And of course he was into the roll racing at that time. There was a lift right here, and then that lift, I would say these two lifts and this section of the garage was actually set up as a shop just for him. We did like a $40,000 build on his Evo. I think we did the 1100 some horsepower. And then he ended up sending us his white GTR that Tony Palo, I think, did the Motec on and some stuff. But then we did a whole build, and I think that was kind of one of our flagship builds as far as like everything. This guy was, I guess if you're spending other people's money, super OCD, like just everything had this black and white theme had to be going on. And so we built that. So either way, he spent like $600 and some thousand with us in like a year and a half or something, right? And so we built like this it was a Turbo 400 Supra we did, and then his brother's black GTR. And so anyway, we're doing all these things, and of course, he got this big toter home, and then I did an investment with him because seemingly he had all these different companies. Supposedly, I think he had a baby stroller invention that was like a baby stroller. And he seemed like maybe he did have decent ideas, but he would try to basically get people to invest in their ideas, and then I guess a Ponzi scheme, and then he did a lot of, I never did, but like he'd do like a small, like, hey, give me $10,000, and supposedly he's buying like clothes or something, and then he'd give people back $12,000 in like a short time. And I guess some people made money off of him that way. So we had the Evo, this white Supra, his white GTR, and then his brother's black GTR. And then he had swindled Lamborghini at Dallas for a sponsorship so he could show up at Lamborghini at Dallas and drive any used Lamborghini off the lot, right? So I show up at these races, set up the cars, all the chairs are color coordinated. I got the techno going, everything's polished, clean, then he rolls up in like an Aventador with the baby seat on the side, and his wife rolls up in a Huracan, and then his brother rolls up in a Huracan, right? And we're like, it's just, maybe somehow it made a fake football team and somehow sold it to some investors for a couple of $1 million. So I think that is where a lot of the money was coming from. I guess he took his attorney maybe for a couple $1 million. This guy was good. And of course, the whole family's there. They're praying before the races, and and so then he came up to me, and of course, my kind of sad. My dad had passed away in 12, so I guess I had a little chunk of change, and so he's like, yeah, I'm starting this insurance company called South Corp, and he's showing me the office, and this guy's gonna run it, and he had some, I guess, bullshit, stuff going on, and so like I invested, I could go cry in a corner, but more, whatever, $200,000 with him, I would say about 6 months after that's when I think his bank accounts kind of got froze because the FBI maybe was coming in. And then he started like trying to sell, like we parted out the one black car and he like sold the part out to a couple of people. And then he wanted to part out the white car. And of course I was invested at that point. I'm like, no, we're not going anywhere now. You know, like we're chilling. So like I had a guy from Australia show up, assuming to see like crates of stuff, you know, and like, so we're trying to tell this guy, the Australian guy, hey, this stuff's really weird. So then Austin like talks to him and he flies to Dallas, meets Austin. Of course, Lamborghini Dallas doesn't know that all of this drama is going down. So Austin goes down and gets an Aventador and gives it to the guy for the weekend to cruise around to like make him feel good for a second. And so then I have a judgment against him for a bunch of money because, you know, wire fraud stuff and all that. But of course it was like a default judgment because they were running from the, you know, I guess whenever you get served, right? They wouldn't let themselves get served or whatever. So a lot of drama. So yeah, so that all just fell apart. It was like pretty sad. So he got the car community. Some people got paid something back, you know. When he started trying to hammer the car communities when things, so whoever he was scamming before, I think I've heard now he's a preacher. And he has like some huge beard on him and he's in Florida somewhere. But I guess his cars, you know, I do justify, we learned a lot on his cars. Some of our, even to this day, I guess how clean I try to keep the trailers and how I kind of set stuff up. He rubbed off on me, so I guess I can kind of justify his existence in some way, even though his legs should probably be cut off, and the fact that he's still alive seems pretty crazy. The 8, I mean, obviously I farted to this car in the beginning. I believe we had the dyno record for a second, you know. Obviously I guess I am a player in micro records. So micro record, you know, is stock turbo stuff, you know, so I had personally, I guess, like my Evo still I think has the stock record for the most power on a stock turbo. But as far as I guess all out, the Evo 8 went away, I guess, in 10, 11 pretty well. And then I guess for a while there, we were just focused. There was no real records going on. We were just focused on the customer cars and we got a lot of notoriety for really good customer cars that worked well. Miles, of course, had some different front wheel drive records going on. I guess the half mile records in the ETS car. So the Evo 10, I want to say by 9 or 10, JR driving the Evo 10 himself, so the owner of Extreme Turbo Systems, got the Evo 10 into the 9s and trap at 140 some miles an hour. World's fastest Evo 10. And then he basically just put it in the corner and sold products. So I think it sat around for about a year or two. So I want to say in like 14 or 15, I put together trying to find sponsors. We got a competition clutch, got the Evo 10 in our hands there, and of course it's on a cob. Well, initially JR had like a cob and like a piggyback AEM computer going on. And so initially we kind of pull all the piggyback stuff off of it and we get just a cob on it. At that time, the ACD transfer case, we didn't really have control of that very well. Well, stupid Evos, when you pull up on like the e-brake, it actually disengages the ACD. You know, we tried to do like a locked ACD where it was just locked all the time, broke like 3 rear ends a row at World Cup finals. You know, this is all, we're running mid to low 9s. I think at that point, maybe we didn't, there was a Puerto Rican Evo 10 that went like low 9s or something. So I think they had the record on us. So they took the record away from ETS. So I guess they were our first nemesis to take down. So I think by first year though, the sponsorship with the cob, then we ended up doing an M800 Motec in it. And then I ended up devising my own. So on Evo 10, you can't put the viscous in there like the 8 because it's a different transfer case. Nothing in a 10. The drivetrain looks similar to an 8. You can actually use an 8 rear end in a 10, 8, 9, but either way, the transmission is different enough. So anyway, we ended up doing a AccuSump. I don't know if that's for like oil pressure. So I actually put an AccuSump on the ACD and then mechanically set the pressure. So that was kind of my, I guess, hillbilly way of creating to control there. So I want to say by 16 or so, we had I think we were running pretty quickly. We were running like 8 8s, 8 9s. At that point, you know, the Evo 10, we kept progressing with the record, but we've always had the record on the Evo 10, you know, partly because it's just not that popular of a platform per se. But honestly, the motor, we were running mid 8s for 16 through, 18 in that car. And honestly, the reliability of it was pretty good once I got the rear end thing sorted out. Motor reliability was pretty good. And then I guess at one point, so we were low 8s with it, I know, 8.2, 8.3, and then kind of out of nowhere, Matt Galliano went like an 8.1 and his. Kind of had a magic pass where the clutch had slid just right for him. He got a really good 60-foot and just nailed a pass, And at that point, some of the sponsors who were with the car were like, well, hey, if this guy beats you guys into the sevens, so back to that whole thing, well, anytime you want something, it becomes much harder. Come around to TX2K the next year, and then we ended up getting a 7.9. It was feeling we were sitting there at 8.0, and then finally I think we broke a rear end in it, did a rear end, like some stuff, but we got that 7.9 finally, so that was off our chest. But I'd say the biggest issue in this car has been some transmission issues. We picked up a Subaru of our customers, and so we have a Subaru that went 860. Brandon Huntley's, called the Lunchbox. And so we didn't really plan on buying it. The original dream was the customer was kind of going to give it to us to race, and then we were just going to put the money into his car and race it. But then Alex, my new service writer, ended up buying the car, and so now we're trying to get him trained up in that car. So the dream is maybe to take that sponsorship that was going on with the 10 and maybe move it to the Subaru a bit. We'd actually probably love to get some more Honda builds coming in, but seems like a lot of the Honda guys are maybe your do-it-yourselfers or, so we've had a few of those. And then I guess the Audi R8 Lamborghini stuff, we want to get into that platform. Still doing tons of Evos, do DSMs down again. Subarus, we're definitely growing that market. And then the Audi R8 Lambo market's one that we're growing also, but it's going a little slower than I like. Yeah, we've been at this, actually it's our 20-year anniversary at this, I would say I'd look at it almost from a bush pilot perspective. Start wrenching as soon as you can. I mean, if you figure out some kind of a beater car to drive. Also, every platform is its own science project, so you need to be careful. So sometimes getting into a niche platform is really cool because you could be a niche guy, but you got to be really smart and dive into it. So don't think you know what you're doing, be open, don't be scared to ask questions, open-minded, Also be super willing to be helpful. Like if somebody helps you, buy products from them. We're Motec dealers and I could buy straight from Motec and maybe make a little more money, but Tony Palo is so helpful, right? I buy my Motecs through Tony because he's there for the tech support, and so easy advice is maybe don't do it, but if you're addicted to it, you're going to do it, right? So just know that it's a struggle. Yeah, I guess obviously Extreme Turbo Systems for the support all of the years. All my guys, Miles and Sean and TJ and Jeff and Aaron and Fab Guy Brad and Jaden who've just stuck here for the years. We have an awesome family here. So all of them, Tony Palo, obviously always being helpful, Wayne Potts being helpful for me, Martin from AMS being helpful, Mike Body, John Fitzcani, Martin from AMS, all the big names, all those guys have been helpful to me at times. Maybe it's because I have a big trailer and I tow their cars around sometimes, so as they say how you get friends, it's lifts and trailers. I guess I do have a big trailer. Obviously GSC Power Division, all the valve train, they've always helped us, like a lot of in the Evo community too, like I try to sell, we're not good parts sales guys. Like 90% of all the parts that we buy, we get installed in the car, but we give real world feedback. We tune everything. Either way, since we do everything in-house and we're able to see the carnage and the problems and give real world feedback. So all the Evos that are going fast with GSC camshafts, and we help, we put it on, we played with the cam gears, like, oh, hey, this was good this way. Then he actually built that into the profile based off of feedback. And then, through the years, like Comp Clutch helped us get the Evo on the market, out there. Obviously, ETS now is helping us. Anybody else on the side I'm forgetting? I think that's it. So I'm trying to think. It seems like inevitably I'll forget somebody and then I'm in trouble.
Lucas English didn't just build fast cars. He built a legacy. From grassroots beginnings to setting world records, English racing represents the heart of this culture. We're proud to share stories like this because at TRC, we live and breathe this just like you do. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.